Up a news article. Anonymous was posting the what they think is the name of the police officer. Now for the rest of the story. The St. Louis County Police Department initially went into spin control and confirmed that the name that Anonymous released is not the name of that police officer. And so Anonymous may have started a whole issue where an innocent man is now going to start receiving death threats for something that he had no involvement in whatsoever. So good responsible action there, Anonymous. Good on you. Doing great things for society at large. Labeling an innocent man who is completely uninvolved in the whole situation and basically painting a target on his head. Good job. Way to double check your sources and confirm your information. Good corroboration there. Love you guys. Great stuff there. And of course, I'm being as sarcastic as I can at the moment, folks, because this was just stupid. And of course, there's a reason why they call themselves anonymous, is because they're too chicken to actually take blame for their mistakes. So, I wish whoever the so-called hacktivist who actually came up with this wrong information would come forward and let everybody know his real name and full on apologize for his mistake, or her mistake as it may be. So yeah, there's that's going on with the whole racism issue. And who knows? We don't even know the identity of the police officer, so how do we even know if he's of one ethnic group or another? We don't. But, yeah. Now, something that you all may recall is a day or two ago, I was talking about the police superintendent over in Chicago, that wonderful bastion of liberty. Yep, gotta love that city. I'm glad I moved away from there and have no intention of ever moving back. That's where I grew up, folks. But the police superintendent there had come out and said some dumb things about gun owners, saying that they're all corrupt. And of course, I had to quip back with, of course, he must be referring to his own favorite cops, not the entire police force, but just that small segment of ones who are corrupt that he happens to be very close to and consider his friends. Must be. Not sure. I don't live up there. I don't have my my hooks in there to exactly know who his closest friends are or not. But just my best guess. Not an actual allegation even per se, just a guess. Just a semi-educated guess. A hypothesis, as it will. Anyway, speaking of wonderful and law-abiding police officers in Chicago, there was one by the name of Dennis Barnes, a 61-year-old, 27-year veteran police officer who decided at a barbecue where some of his fellow officers were attending, along with their families, decided to go to one of his fellow police officers, one of his good friends, and go to their 9-year-old daughter and attempt to have his way with her, as it would. And that's, of course, an allegation. That's what the charges are. I'm thinking it's, I have to read, well, y'all go to BuzzPo and read the actual article by Eric Reed. Chicago police sergeant charged with sexually fondling a 9-year-old girl. And there's multiple counts levied against this police officer. and he actually turned himself in. He wasn't hunted down and arrested. He actually went willingly into the police office and I guess confessed to what have you. But he also has a defense attorney. And of course, the flip side of this is that the allegations are all ridiculous and people are overreacting, blah, 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 blah. And he just turned himself in rather than getting the bad press of having to be pursued or whatever the case might be, blah, blah. But evidently there's also been some kind of relationship between this police officer and the girl's mother, who's married to one of his buddies who's on the police force with him. So that just makes this whole situation even more questionable as to the morals of those involved. But think about it. These are the people that we tell our children, if you're in trouble, find a police officer. Look up to them. They're there to protect you. Well, no, they're not. Was it Gonzalez versus Castle Rock? Kind of shed light on that. The Supreme Court case where they ruled, and it wasn't the only one. It just happens to be the one I know off the top of my head. It's happened several times. But police do not have a duty to protect citizens. No, they don't. They have a duty to enforce laws and to investigate crimes after they've been committed, or to intercede if they're in the process of being committed and attempt to stop them in the act if they can. But they have no real responsibility to prevent, as it will. Of course, they all want to, because the more they prevent, the less dangerous of a job they have. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that. But they don't have any responsibility to provide protection to any individual citizen. But we tell our kids, if you feel you're in trouble, if you feel somebody's trying to do something to you, or chase you down, or make you get into a car you don't want to get into, especially a stranger, go to a police officer. Yet here we have a police officer who's doing the very things that we tell our children police officers will stop. Makes you question. Now, like I've said before, there's bad eggs everywhere, and we could sit there and dwell on the bad egg elements in any sector. Just because you have the onesies, twosies, doesn't mean the entire group is bad. And like I've said, there are good police officers out there, and we're very grateful for what they do. But they need to police themselves. They need to look at their buddies, because if their buddies are doing bad things to make them look bad, they may want to first wonder if that person's really a friend, because they're harming all the good police officers when they do this stuff. And secondly, it really puts a damper on the public trust. So we invest this public trust in them, but can we really trust them? And also it brings up the questioning of that when police officers, the onesie, twosie, corrupt ones, do things like this, like Dennis Barnes allegedly did. You know, it's a sad state of affairs, folks. And this is not something new. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades. Just that, thanks to the current media, we get to know more about it. So I'm guessing because the whole thing with the superintendent of Chicago Police, his statement was about gun owners, I guess maybe it's a good time to lean into our Second Amendment segment. What do you guys think? Is that a yes? Well, I guess it's going to be a yes. Also over here on BuzzPo, and also by Eric Reed, who he's the president of Gun Rights Across America. So he does write a lot of Second Amendment level articles, or centric articles, as I should say. And he has a great one out of Georgia, and of course Georgia recently has passed some new laws, kind of removing some of the infringements to the Second Amendment that have been passed over the years. And that sparked some controversy, which I really thought was hilarious because somebody called some of their laws the most extreme pro-gun laws ever. And I'm looking at the laws and what they're allowing, and I'm going, Arizona's already had all that and more for years. So it was kind of funny. Most extreme gun laws ever. Oh, come on, folks. Really not paying attention to the rest of the world, are you? Anyway, a gun control activist down in Georgia by the name of Nikki Watson she's fuming. She's, to use Eric Reed's exact word, fuming. She's upset. She's beyond upset because she started a gun buyback program in order to try to take some of the rifles and other firearms off the street. Well, under Georgia law, any guns collected have to be returned to the rightful owner. And if they're not wanted, or if a search proves unfruitful, that the guns are either retained in police inventory or they're auctioned off. Well, last year through a buyback program, they were able to collect some 5,000 or so guns throughout the year. Well, 1,400 of those guns are being auctioned off back to the general public. So Nikki Watson has got her panties in a knot and held up tight between those cheeks and causing quite an irritation over this. As she said, "My whole objective was to get them off the streets. I don't agree with the law that has been passed, and I think we should pressure our local legislators to find a way to change that." Yeah. Well, Miss Watson, go dust off that copy of the Constitution that you've never read, and go ahead and read through Articles 1 through, was it 6 or 7? Anyway, right after that, you have these things called amendments. And the first 10 had to be adopted before the Constitution could actually be ratified, because everybody kind of thought they were implied through the base document, but some smart people turned around and said, hey, if we don't say this explicitly, some tyrant down the road is going to infringe on these rights that we think are automatic, especially given all that we went through over the past couple of decades trying to get ourselves free. So they put them in plain English. And the second one on there says flat out that because the government has armed forces, and because they have to have those armed forces in order to defend the nation, and because they have to have police, etc., well, your average citizens need to be able to defend themselves against the misuse of that force, should it rise and become tyrannical. So therefore, the citizens of this nation have the right to own or keep and to carry or bear arms. It doesn't limit those in one way or the other. It just says that it implies that they have to be something that is equal to what the armed forces would have. Of course, since then, people have said, hey, it's not really common sense for your average citizen to have a tank. And while I would love to have one, I don't have room in my backyard. And driving on the street, well, they tear up streets. And last thing I would want to do is have to increase my city taxes in order to pay for the damage that a tank would cause. But anyway, good old Nikki Watson is upset because a gun buyback program collected guns that the police cannot legally destroy or keep. So they're auctioning them off, and they're going back into the general population. Yeah, have fun with that. Talk about people going off for ridiculous reasons. So that's kind of our current little update on Second Amendment issues, folks. And it's kind of a good one for a Friday because we get to look and point and laugh at at some of the idiocy out there. But if you do go over to BuzzPo and read that article by Eric Reed, while you're over there, there's a video linked in an article called "Dude Makes PB&J with an Assault Rifle." So you may want to go and take a look at that. It's worth a couple of chuckles and interest looking through that, since you're over at the site anyway. So go ahead over to BuzzPo and enjoy that article while you're there. Yeah, all kinds of interesting things going on. And the hyperactive blue healer just reminded me, I need to update you on remember yesterday, folks, I told you about what I did on Wednesday evening. I went to a city budget meeting and got to sit down and talk with people about fine-tuning the city budget. Well, one thing I don't remember if I mentioned yesterday or not, but when I looked around the room at every one of these little small work groups that we broke down into around these tables, there was an SEIU member at each and every one, and they all proposed the same thing. Now, it's something that wasn't even in the budget, something not even in the proposal, something that wasn't even supposed to be a topic for discussion, which makes it even worse. But they're evidently pushing an agenda. So I had to give a little look into maybe why they're pushing it. And this is not just a city thing here. It actually reaches into a national agenda. But what they want to do here in San Antonio, Texas, is they asked that the city increase the commercial property taxes on hotels, especially corporate-owned ones. And why? Why that specifically? Because, well, I don't know about other places, but here, the general rule of thumb among most citizens of this little area is property tax rates are high enough. They don't need to go any higher. As property values go up, there'll be more revenue, but the tax rates do not need to be raised. And most people are, by and large, against any tax hike right now. So, trying to do a general raise, that evidently was not a subject of discussion, but they proposed a targeted one, specifically naming lodging facilities, hotels and motels, and the like. And why? Why? Well, folks, it all ties to the fact that they're losing the minimum wage debate. And they've made attempts to try to unionize several of these lodging facilities as far as the people doing the room cleaning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, well, they're losing the minimum wage debate, raising it. And so they're trying to get back at those entities. And, of course, this is all coming, folks, right on the heels of when the SEIU lost a federal case where they were, in other states, they were charging the parents of adult disabled citizens who were receiving SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. It's like, let's say you were in your 50s or 60s and you had a child who was in their 20s and had multiple sclerosis or cerebral palsy or some other debilitating disease, or was severely injured from an accident or something, something tragic like that. And the child is getting the Social Security, and that money is going towards taking care of them, their health, their day-to-day activities, their food, etc. And they're living at home with their parents, and their parents are doing most of this work. Well, the SEIU, in some states, was charging these parents union dues to take care of their own kids. Ridiculous, ludicrous. Well, the courts agreed with me on this, that it's ridiculous, and ruled in favor of the parents and said, you can't charge parents union dues for taking care of their kids. Sorry. You can't even really force people to pay union dues anyway, but that's beside the point. You know, you can't charge these parents union dues. They don't.